I once ran the same setup through 5 separate signups on a platform I thought I had wired correctly: clean fingerprint, matched mobile proxy, an aged browser profile, everything lined up the way it's supposed to, and every single one of those 5 got flagged before the verification code even sent. No ban message, no explanation, just the code that never arrived and an account stuck in limbo. That's the moment that teaches you fingerprinting and phone verification are not the same fight, and treating them as one problem is how operators lose accounts they thought were safe. Yeah, I run real proxy farms and cloud phone racks for a living, and I test anti-detect browsers like multilogin, GoLogin, Camelio, Adds Power, and Dolphin NT against actual multi-account setups, not spec sheets. So what I'm walking through here is what I've watched happen on real accounts, not a theory I picked up secondhand. Browser fingerprinting tells a platform one specific thing. This session looks like a new device, based on canvas hash, WebGL renderer string, font list, screen resolution, time zone, and navigator properties, and an anti-detect browser exists to vary exactly that list. Phone verification tells the platform something else entirely. This device is tied to a real billable phone number, and we can count how many other accounts have ever touched that same number. Those are 2 separate defenses running at the same time, precisely because each one catches a failure mode the other one misses completely. A well-built anti-detect profile can genuinely make account A and account B look like 2 unrelated machines instead of the same Chromium instance with a different cookie jar sitting on top. And when it's set up carefully, that part of the job works. None of it touches the phone number layer though, because a platform asking for SMS verification isn't reading your canvas hash at that step. It's checking a number against every other account that number has ever been attached to, and increasingly against the carrier and line type sitting behind it as well. That's the part I see new operators miss constantly. You can have an aged, internally consistent, well-matched fingerprint profile, proxy region agreeing with browser locale, everything textbook, and still get burned the instant you type in a number, because the number carries its own reputation completely independent of whatever browser sits on top of it. When you submit a number for SMS verification, the platform, or a fraud vendor it plugs into behind the scenes, similar in function to something like Telesign or Twilio Verify, runs several checks before a code is ever sent. Line type comes first: mobile, VoIP, fixed line, or unknown, and VoIP or fixed line numbers get flagged or rejected outright on plenty of platforms simply because real personal accounts overwhelmingly verify from mobile lines, and the platform knows that ratio code. Carrier and country come right after that. A number issued by a virtual carrier, known mainly for reselling bulk SIMs, reads very differently to a risk model than one issued by a major consumer telco, and the country mismatch against your IP, your declared browser locale, or your payment region adds risk score on top of whatever the line type already flagged. Reuse history is the strongest signal in the whole stack. If that same number has verified 40 accounts on this platform over the past month, that one fact outweighs almost anything happening at the browser layer. No matter how clean it looks, which is exactly why serious phone farms rotate SIMs and cloud phone numbers through a pool instead of running one batch of numbers into the ground. Velocity closes out the list. How many verification attempts land on that number in a short window, and across how many distinct sign-up flows, because one person creating one account looks nothing like an operation creating accounts in batches. And that shape shows up clearly on the platform side, even when nothing looks unusual on yours. None of this scoring is visible to you as the operator. You don't get a dashboard showing your number's risk score before you commit to it. You just get a failed send, a silent flag, or an account that dies a week later for no stated reason, which is exactly why I run a throwaway test account against a fresh number before I ever put a number I actually care about behind anything real. An anti-detect browser's job stops at the network and rendering layer, and inside that layer it does real work. It keeps each profile's cookies, local storage, and fingerprint surface isolated so nothing from account A leaks into account B. It pairs cleanly with a dedicated residential or mobile proxy per profile, so the IP a session presents actually matches the country the number claims. and it holds a consistent fingerprint across sessions, so a profile you log back into next week doesn't look like a brand new device to the platform all over again. What it cannot do is manufacture a clean phone number out of nothing. And it cannot make a VoIP number read as a mobile line to a carrier lookup API, because that particular check happens entirely server-side against telco data the browser never touches at any point in the request. I've run test profiles in Dolphin NT and AdsPower with a solid, internally consistent fingerprint and a properly matched mobile proxy sitting behind it, and still watched SMS verification fail for exactly one reason: the number itself was a VoIP line that the platform's carrier lookup rejected before a code ever went out. The browser did precisely what it was built to do. The number just wasn't good enough to clear a check the browser has no visibility into at all. Operators usually reach for one of three sources when a platform demands a number, and the three are not remotely interchangeable, and I've burnt real money finding that out the slow way rather than the cheap way. Disposable SMS receive services are cheap and fast, but they get reused so heavily across so many operators that they burn out within days, sometimes hours. The same pool of numbers gets recycled across dozens of unrelated sign-up attempts. So by the time you type one in, it may already carry a reuse count higher than anything a real person would ever generate. Fine for a one-off account you genuinely don't mind losing, but not something I'd ever put behind an account worth keeping past a week. Physical SIM farms, a rack of real SIMs sitting in real modems, each with its own IMEI and its own carrier registration, get you a genuinely mobile line with real usage history behind it, which is much closer to what a platform expects from a normal user. That comes at real cost though: SIMs, modems, data plans, and physical hardware that has to stay powered and online, and it isn't unlimited either. A telco eventually notices a SIM that only ever receives one text a week and never places a call, and starts treating that line differently, sometimes deprioritizing it, sometimes flagging it for review on their own site long before any platform ever sees the number. Running that kind of farm, well, means rotating usage across the rack deliberately, not just plugging in SIMs and forgetting about them. Cloud phones, a remote Android instance tied to a real SIM and a real IMEI, accessed over a session instead of hardware you personally own, get you closer to genuine device-level signals than a browser fingerprint alone ever can. Real accelerometer noise, real GPS behavior, an actual carrier network path underneath the whole session. But it's still a shared resource under the hood, provisioned out of a pool, and the same reuse history problem resurfaces the moment that pool isn't managed with real care by whoever runs it. I've watched a cloud phone provider quietly hand the same device back out to a new renter within hours of the last one finishing a session, which is exactly the kind of turnover that builds up a reuse count fast if nobody on the operator side is tracking which numbers have already gone through a verification flow recently. None of those three tiers is a guarantee of anything. They're a spectrum of how closely the number and the device behind it resemble what a genuine user would actually present to the platform. And the platform scoring reacts to that resemblance directly, not to whichever label you put on the tier you chose. Two-factor authentication built on a rotating code, the kind Google Authenticator or Authy generates, is a completely different animal from SMS verification. It never touches a phone number at all. It's a shared secret created once at sign-up and checked against the time-based code from that point forward, with no carrier, no SIM, and no line type in the loop anywhere. From where I sit, that actually makes up the easier half of this whole problem. The secret lives in a file or a vault entry instead of a physical SIM, so keeping each profile's secret correctly paired to its matching browser profile is a bookkeeping discipline, not a hardware constraint. The failure mode here isn't platform detection at all. It's operator error, reusing one authenticator app across accounts it was never meant to cover, or simply losing track of which secret belongs to which profile until two accounts collide. When a platform layers SMS verification on top and a device trust cookie on top of fingerprinting, that stack isn't an oversight somebody forgot to simplify. It's the platform telling you plainly that it already priced in browser-level spoofing as a known quantity and build additional layers specifically to sit outside whatever an anti-detect browser can influence. The theme running underneath everything above is that platforms score an account on how well every signal agrees with every other signal at once. Does the phone number's country match the proxy's country? Does the proxy's country match the declared time zone and locale sitting in the browser? Does the number's line type match what a genuine user of this account type would actually be expected to carry? Does the verification velocity look like one person signing up once, rather than an operation signing up in visible batches? A pristine fingerprint sitting next to a void number and a mismatched proxy region doesn't average out to medium risk in that model. It often reads as more suspicious than a merely average fingerprint with every other signal lined up correctly, because the mismatch itself becomes the signal the platform's model is actually looking for. I've seen this play out the opposite way too, a fairly ordinary fingerprint profile that sailed straight through verification because the number, the proxy, and the declared locale all told the same consistent story, while a far more polished profile sitting next to a mismatched number got flagged within minutes. That's also exactly why I won't tell you any anti-detect browser makes an account undetectable or unbannable. The browser is one layer among several, and the phone plus two-factor layer sits largely outside anything a browser, no matter how well engineered, can reach or influence. Running a small batch of accounts through your actual verification flow on the actual carrier and cloud phone setup you plan to scale with later will teach you more in one afternoon than any spec sheet comparison between tools ever will, because the spec sheet can't see the carrier lookup and the batch test can. I test these browsers on real multi-account setups, so the written reviews and the picks I actually trust are all at antidetectreview.org. Full written reviews and tested picks are at antidetectreview.org. Go take a look and subscribe if you want the next real-world test before you spend $1 on any tool.